Good morning, everyone. I call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Madam the Clerk, roll call, please.
Each member is acknowledging that they are attending the meeting via Zoom and that they are located in Wayne County, Michigan, unless otherwise stated when I call your name. Commissioner Varga.
Here.
Commissioner Palomera.
Here.
Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Here.
Commissioner Dobb.
Here.
Commissioner Baydoun.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Chair Haddis.
Present.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you. Next item.
Chair's remarks.
I have none today. Next item.
C, approval of the July 13th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Here and none. Take roll call, please.
Commissioner Varga.
Yes.
Commissioner Palomera.
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Yes.
Commissioner Dobb.
Yes.
Commissioner Baydoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Chair Haddis.
Yes. Next item.
D, unfinished business. There is none listed.
Okay, if we could take, yes, the addenda, next item, please.
Item 2 on the addenda, requesting commission approval of modification 1 to a contract with a 1-year option to renew with Guidehouse Inc.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dobb.
I know that this is, we're spending a lot of money with Guidehouse, and I know that they've done a lot of great work for us, but is there someone either from Guidehouse or the administration who could just kind of give us a summary on what they've done so far and what they're going to do with the additional money that we're approving today?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have Wafa, Ms. De Niro.
Yep, Wafa De Niro Economic Development. So this contract is specific to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Wayne County is receiving $32 million from the federal government to administer an emergency rental assistance program in Out County. And there's a lot of rules and restrictions, and we're expecting a backlog of applications to process. So similar to what they did with the small business grant, they will help us build the platform. They'll help us process the applications, make sure they're compliant, chase down documents, and different from the small business grant, they're going to help us promote this program. So the intention is to market this program, literally go into some of the low-income communities and knock on their door, tell them that this program is there, make sure tenants and landlords know that this program is available, and be able to spend this money as quickly as possible. We are really on a huge time crunch to spend this money. We have until March to spend $16 million. And if we spend the $16 million, then we will get an additional allocation. So we really don't have a lot of time to spend this money. And this is Emergency Rental Assistance Program 2. ERAP 1 went directly to the state, and the state has really struggled spending the money. They are programming the dollars through Wayne Metro, and Wayne Metro is several thousand applicants backlogged. So people who have applied months and months ago have still not been processed. And our intention is to be able to process these within a very short time frame. Our goal is, within 2 weeks of application being submitted to processing it. So Guidehouse will be bringing in staff to augment, to be able to process these, to be able to get them through the system and get the money out as quickly as possible.
Okay. Okay, great.
And Wafa, if you could.
They
Yes.
did a great job with the small business program. So I think that they'll do a great job with this program as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've started to build out the program, and we've started to talk about what the process will look like. And we can't do it without them. It's just, we don't have the manpower to do it without them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. This sounds like a huge undertaking. So, okay. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, Wafa. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Wafa, if you could mention, is the money would be paid to the landlord directly.
Yes.
That makes a difference in the success of the program.
Yeah, so the idea is that we would allow landlords to apply directly to the program on behalf of their tenants. Their tenants still have to agree and still have to submit paperwork, but we would be paying the landlords directly. We'll be paying DTE because this program also allows for utility payments. We'll be paying DTE directly, and we've asked the Treasury Department if we can pay the municipalities directly for like the water bills. We don't have an answer on that yet, but the idea is to be able to pay the utilities directly if we can, and pay as many people directly as we can. And if that's not an option, we will absolutely pay the tenants direct.
Okay. Commissioner Varga.
Thank you. A couple of things. When will this start? And two, will they have to apply through Wayne Metro and Guidehouse will help them, or is this going to be totally separate?
No, they will apply through us. We will have it on the Wayne County webpage. We will be processing it. It will all be internal. Wayne Metro doesn't have capacity to take on more applications, so we intend on doing it all in-house. I'm sorry, I know that was your second question. What was the first question?
First one was, after we approve, this gets approved at full board, when will we start accepting? Yes. Or when will the applications go out?
So we're looking to, like early September is when we'd like to start taking applications.
Will this be backdated or from that day on?
From that, so the way the program works, we can pay up to 18 months of rent per individual. So, and we can go back 15 months and we can pay forward 3 months. So anybody who is in arrears for up to 18 months, we can pay them for their full 15 months, and then we can pay them for their future 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, I have to work with the landlord. I can't believe they raised the rent about $120 a month right after we opened up. So they're struggling now to pay their bills. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wafa,
Commissioner Baydun, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wafa, if I helped several tenants, with Wayne Metro. Will they qualify to receive some of this assistance, even though they got help through Wayne Metro?
So it's kind of a nuanced answer, maybe. You can only qualify for 18 months total between the two programs, okay. But you might be able to qualify for an additional 3 months. ERAP 1, you can only qualify for 15 months. So if they qualified for the full 15 months, they still might be able to qualify for 3 more months of rental assistance. Okay. So maybe.
All right. Thank you, Wafa.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other commissioner or any other question? Because I can't see.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner. How is it that we are, or Guidehouse is keeping track of any overlap?
It's a great question.
In programs. Yeah.
So we're talking to MISTA, and MISTA is going to give us access to their platform, and we're going to be cross-checking every single application to make sure that that there's no overlap, and we'll be sharing our list of awardees with Wayne Metro weekly so that they can cross-check and do the duplication of benefits.
Okay, and so is it only 2 organizations working in this effort?
Yeah.
And does it include the City of Detroit database and who they're working with? And
so we cannot process Detroit applications. We will only be processing out county. This money is only for out county because Detroit is getting their own allocation and they're gonna be processing their own applications.
Okay, but Wayne Metro also processes Detroit, right?
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if Detroit is providing assistance.
So Detroit did take Detroit is programming an ERAP 2 program, but they haven't released any details. They haven't, I don't know where the city is with their program.
Okay, yeah, I was just concerned about the overlapping of resources and how that is being handled.
No,
okay.
I mean, we're required to, we're going to have to check for duplication of benefits because we can only award one person up to 18 months per the Treasury guidance. So the city is going to have to do duplication of benefits checks. I don't have the answer on how they're going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
If I could, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
The criteria for it, is there a 1040 that they're going to be looking at from last year, or how will that how will they be able to apply?
That's probably, but we're still working out those details. I don't, once we kind of work out the application and program, I'll be able to come back and give you guys some more concrete answers on what the application will look like.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other question? Hearing none, motion was made and supported. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Varga?
Yes.
Commissioner Palomera?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Yes.
Commissioner Dobb?
Yes.
Commissioner Baydoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Hattis?
Yes. Thank you. Next item.
Item 1, under new business, a presentation on the results of the retail corridor study in Out County.
Okay, Mrs. Danero,
Yep.
Floor yours.
Thank you. So last year, you guys approved a retail study to look at some of the retail corridors in Out County and look at some of the effects that COVID has had on those retail corridors. We have Bobby Boone here who led the retail study, and he's kind of going to go through some of the results of the study and talk about where we go from here. Bobby, I'll let you take the floor.
All right, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. Thanks.
Good morning.
As Wafaa mentioned, I've been working on this project for the better part of the year, since the end of December last year and then into this month. I have a deck that I'll be presenting that walks through, where we are, where we're headed. So largely, where we started this project is just understanding, what Wayne County small business serving corridors are, where they're going in the future through various activities. So this project, just so we're all on the same page, it's largely a benchmarking exercise, understanding, can we categorize the different commercial corridors throughout the county? We're conducting analysis of market conditions along those corridors, meaning, what are the population trends in those communities? How are the business mix? How's the business mix performing within each of the communities? And then we assess the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that really is all the organizations who are impacting the success of the small businesses. So that ranges from like chambers of commerce to nonprofit organizations, as well as like DDAs, et cetera. As we moved forward through our strategy, we looked at each of the communities specifically, through engagement with those communities, identified a priority small business corridor, as well as other priorities within the community themselves, and then came up with various strategies to support those corridors and their growth. Based upon best practices, as well as understanding kind of where we are within national and regional retail trends. All of this information was summarized within this deck, within this implementation plan, that just really targets how do we provide the supports needed in order to preserve and attract retail businesses. So moving forward, what we've done, throughout the process is, really in 4 major phases. 1, define, where the corridors and the businesses are, engaging with, various stakeholders on the ground through various surveys, as well as one-on-one meetings with the communities themselves. We analyzed all of that data and then designed the solutions. But I wanted to stop here and just make sure we're clear about all of the data that we provided. So, one, we looked at the Back to Work grant and analyzed that information to understand, how are businesses performing? How are they performing pre-COVID and during COVID? Where are these businesses located, in what categories, et cetera? We also conducted a retail inventory utilizing Google data. So meaning we looked at the actual Google Maps and pulled all of the data that's from those maps into a spreadsheet, and we utilized that as the basis for the mapping exercises. We conducted a physical conditions assessment, which really looked at the corridors and where these businesses lie, what those physical conditions are, from things that impact walkability to vehicular access, as well as visibility and corridor attractiveness. And those things, everything from safety and lighting are all kind of within that category. And then we looked at social economic data, which really leverage population trends and expenditure patterns, et cetera, just understanding where the county is. And the final 3 are all surveys, and that one that was administered to the community itself on policies and programs supporting small businesses. Then we looked at small businesses and the COVID impacts. And so, asking additional questions to complement the data from the Back to Work grant, but to provide greater detail about what those businesses' needs are. And then the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that, again, are those organizations that support the small businesses. Just so we're clear on, what we're looking at in terms of retail, here are, many of the categories that were studied. And these categories are, specifically common among, neighborhood and, community serving retail districts. And, when you look at those categories into, their kind of parent categories, we divide them into 3 different kind of buckets. 1, neighborhood goods and services. That's typically associated with everything that you do on a weekly routine shopping or a monthly routine, such as grocery store, dry cleaners, laundromats, salons, spas, etc. Food and beverage, which is everything you eat outside and eat and drink outside of the home. And then general merchandise, which is things that you associated with typical traditional retail, clothing stores, furniture, etc. And so we group them in these 3 categories because the customer behavior they're similar within those categorical definitions. And so being able to look at businesses within those categories and make conclusions is what, is a kind of national best practice. So I'm gonna dive first into market conditions. Understand kind of in the overall MSA, the population is growing slightly, from both the period of 2018 to 2020, which is figure at the top, and then 2010 to 2020, based upon, the initial census, et cetera. And then when you dive into Wayne County specifically, understand population growth, from that 2018-2020 period was negative 0.56% and then 3.76% in 2010 to 2020. But when we look at retail revenue growth, there follows also a decline. And so this retail revenue is the retail businesses who applied for the Back to Work grant, and understanding, how their revenue has trended between 2018 and 2019. So this was pre-pandemic figures. And so understanding this is kind of the premise of, where we are headed within this analysis. This slide is really detailing the number of establishments quarter over quarter over the past year. So 2 years. Sorry. So this is 2019 Q1, so starting in January all the way into Q4 of 2020. You understand that, the number of establishments peaked into Q3 of 2019, and then have since slowly been decreasing with a more substantial, I would say, decrease within between Q2 and Q3 of 2020. And so that's a pandemic impact here. Some of the things that we want to point out is just we categorize them by those 3 categories that listed previously, and understand that general merchandise category is has been the most impacted between Q3 of 2019, this figure here, and Q4 of 2020. And so understanding that, some of the things that we understand from a national landscape is that general merchandise, apparel, furniture, and other retailers in that category are experiencing the most contraction. So that's your big department stores within that category. Those are, other things that many consumers are shopping online for. And so therefore, largely, those brick and mortar establishments being disrupted, as well as there aren't as many brands who are expanding their footprint within those categories. You see more grocery expansion that's happening, more dollar store expansion. Those are within neighborhood services, as well as restaurant expansion that's occurring. That's both, at the local level as well as throughout the nation. We also took a look at employment, understanding, how the pandemic impacted employment. And so this is a percentage change from 2019 figures to 2020. And so you understand year over year in January, they were pretty much on par. But once the pandemic hit in March, really many of the establishments closing because many of the specifically food and beverage establishments having a large challenge because they were unable to have indoor dining opportunities. And so therefore didn't have as much of a staffing need. Then you see it slowly uptick as reopening occurred. However, within November, when you had another spike in infection, as well as additional public health measures that were underway in terms of closing back down many of the establishments, you saw another dip within food and beverage. And you see food and beverage is the primary category that was impacted through COVID. There were impacts across the other 2 categories, but they pretty much had a more of a solid rebound in terms of employment. Then looking at expenditures. So expenditures, this is how much people are spending per household on different different categories of retail. And so here's the expenditures tab, and then we're comparing that against employment and establishments. But 54% of those expenditures represents neighborhood goods and services. So that's pretty much on par with many communities across the nation, as it reflects, just the essential needs that are happening within communities. About 20% on food and beverage, so food outside the home, and then 25% on general merchandise and regular retail. One of the things that we notice within this, though, is that when comparing this percentage breakdown to employment, you understand that food and beverage has larger number of employees, as well as the general merchandise has more employees than the neighborhood goods and service establishments. And that's for several reasons. That one is maybe associated with an oversupply of retail, but two, it's also efficiencies that are built in within kind of some of these essential services within neighborhood goods and services category. And then when you look at the number of establishments, though, it too is skewed. And so one of the things, we trying to understand here is what is needed in order to kind of right size these numbers according to the operations of each of those establishments. And so, that really gives us this overarching strategy, which we're calling pruning to grow. So understanding that, there are many businesses who are struggling right now. Some of them that are have a desire to close, some of them that want to remain open, keep operating. But thinking about that opportunity, there's also looking at those kind of at-risk general merchandise categories that's mentioned in terms of, hey, we have these e-commerce brands that are more so, or customers who are utilizing e-commerce in order to fulfill those kind of needs, as well as being able to travel the distance needed in order to obtain those goods or services. And so moving forward, within the countywide recommendations, we're looking for a strategic approach really to understand what the right size of retail is for each of the communities, and then to kind of support them through programmatic elements. One of the big questions that arose through this project was, what's a safe investment? And, what we did in terms of looking from business category to business category, which are all listed at the bottom. So from auto repair to liquor stores and cafes, you understand that, but from 2018 to 2019, the performance is indicated by this top line. And then from the 2019 to 2020 revenue growth is indicated by the bottom line. And this is zero. So, positive revenue growth is shaded in red, negative revenue growth is shaded in gray. So here, what you find is there are many categories that were struggling before the pandemic, as previously mentioned, but there are some that were slowly growing. Simultaneously, there are categories that were dramatically impacted by the pandemic. So looking at auto repair, one, it was struggling prior to COVID in terms of the businesses back to work grant. So this is businesses that submitted a grant application and how their revenue was prior to the pandemic and during. And then you see categories such as hookah and cigar bars that were experiencing revenue growth significantly impacted by COVID, or stores like liquor stores, which, you know, prior to COVID, they were experiencing revenue decline, but weren't as impacted by COVID just because, you know, thinking like, hey, now potentially many of that bar expenditure is going into a liquor store. And so thinking about, you know, what that means is one perspective of measuring, hey, are we investing in business categories that were performing well prior to the pandemic, or certain communities that were? However, you know, one of the things that we did was look at, you know, how's revenue growth occurring, kind of community by community. Canton Township is one of the communities that experienced one of the highest kind of revenue growth through our study. But you understand that, you know, even within that that community, there's negative revenue growth that's occurring by many of the establishments. Each of these dots represents a single establishment. When you're looking at liquor stores, for instance, and so you say, hey, they were experiencing negative revenue growth prior to COVID, but majority of the establishments are actually experiencing positive revenue growth holistically. And so thinking about, you know, what does that mean, and understanding that as a challenge is that, you know, investing in businesses is risky. You know, specifically retail small business, there is not a clear indicator for what success looks like. And you want to, you know, continue providing the opportunity for as many businesses as possible in order for them to be able to, you know, for the businesses who will succeed to succeed, and for those who will fail to fail. And so it's an equity question, you know, here, and you want to be able to invest strategically because of that. So I'm gonna go into the countywide recommendations, and then we're gonna go community specific. So first recommendation is bolstering place management. One of the things that we recognize within this approach is that, you know, many of the communities have a DDA, a Downtown Development Authority, that is working alongside the business community, you know, in various capacities. However, you know, one of the things that we really wanted to mention is that, you know, there are lack of other organizational typologies that are supporting businesses in a way, in a uniform way across the county. And so if, you know, we're able to tap into the DDA structure in order to, you know, provide additional provision of services, both technical assistance as well as place-based investment, we're able to kind of create more of a bang for your buck throughout that structure. And so, you know, things that we're talking about in terms of implementing the strategy include looking specifically at those DDA organizations, understanding what the challenges that they're facing in terms of administering some of those services, and providing them, you know, both the skills that's associated with delivering them, as well as a support system in which they can rely on one another for increased capacity. And so, you know, these, you know, within that kind of DDA structure, also considering if there are joint purchasing agreements that could be created in order to alleviate cost and create economies of scale, et cetera. And so, you know, largely our place management strategy relies on, you know, DDAs and exploring them as the opportunity for continued growth, instead of creating a new structure that will require many more staff people in order to actually deploy. Next, we talked about technical assistance programs. And, you know, technical assistance is really essential to small business growth. You know, I was actually just in a conversation with a restaurant consultant, and he was talking about, hey, like, I was like, hey, what's the biggest challenges you're experiencing with the restaurant, you know, small business restaurants that you're working with? He was like, largely it's just the adaptation of understanding what the role is of social media, what the role is of e-commerce, as well as how they need to utilize, you know, standardized operational protocol in order to, you know, continue to grow and to train employees in order to and adapt to the new kind of norm that's occurring. And so understanding that, you know, and many other things that we assess through the small business survey, you know, we really wanted to kind of dive into these technical assistance programs as a potential opportunity, because that's the training that's needed, because, you know, each business case is very different, and, you know, having a homogenized kind of product is not necessarily most useful, and specifically because many of those businesses are at different stages within their perspective. So, you know, technical assistance, you know, whether that's working with the Expanding Community Navigators program, which the county just submitted for, or other opportunities, you know, it will hopefully be able to, you know, determine which of the businesses are prime for growth. You know, what business owners, as, you know, many of them actually discuss, like, hey, we actually are considering closing. So how do we provide them exit strategies for that? And some of those exit strategies can look like selling businesses off to, you know, their competitors or their employees with the cooperative model, et cetera, and having support that's required in order to do so, so that they won't, you know, feel the, you know, continued bleeding that's occurring in terms of revenue loss year over year. Next, we talked a little bit about private property improvements. So, you know, one of the things that we noticed was, you know, there's, you know, both a public and private property lens to consider. However, within the greater Out County area, there's so many different property typologies. These property typologies range from, you know, suburban strip centers to inline, you know, urban form, et cetera. And being able to invest within those properties strategically really relies on a partnership at this time. So thinking about, you know, hey, within these suburban shopping centers, are there opportunities for increased, you know, placemaking or, you know, improvement of the actual physical conditions that result in increased shopping? And so, you know, right now we've seen the rise in curbside pickup and, you know, the need for, you know, parking that's associated with it, but also outdoor dining. How do you integrate that within that suburban strip center that differs from the urban form that's much more of a public investment in leveraging kind of the, at the county, leveraging the communities to kind of make inroads with those property owners, as well as to continue to subsidize those investments. So whether that is a matching grant program at a certain percentage or, you know, one-to-one, and that, you know, can be further subsidized, one by the community or the property owner itself. And so thinking about that strategically really allows for places to be created that supports retail expansion and growth, and for those communities to latch on to those spaces. One of the things that we heard within many of the surveys was that the desire and even the pride that the businesses had within their community support structures and leveraging those community support structures for additional revenue opportunities as a as a future opportunity for the coming years and months as a growth strategy is something that really can occur through these private property improvements. And then recommendation 4 is looking at a business registration countywide. So understanding that largely data is missing from the small business landscape. And this is one of the initial approaches in terms of all the data that we collected in that inventory, back to work grant surveys, et cetera. But utilizing this as the baseline and creating a system that enables collaboration across the county and within these communities in terms of supporting those businesses and business registration of sorts that could be associated with a their licensing protocol, whether that's through the state annually or others that really allows the county to capture specific business information as well as track how growth is occurring. And so in furthering the understanding that occurs at the local level in terms of, hey, are we oversupplied in retail? Are we undersupplied? How are these businesses performing based upon, that presumption that, hey, if revenue is decreasing year over year, maybe we are oversupplied. Let's take a more strategic look at that. One of the other things that's mentioned, a couple of minutes ago is just, many of the businesses really talked about like how the local support from the community impacts, their business conditions, and have some of the communities is like, hey, I live in a area in which events are prevalent. This actually is a great contributor to my sales year over year, or conversely, I don't. And so thinking about strategies that can support the small businesses from that perspective, really diving into an opportunity to provide grants for these business owners. I mean, not the business owner, but community members that are designed to create business generating activities. So, street festivals, or, that the streets aren't like primed for that. Is that a shop and stroll type of thing? Like, hey, maybe I can't shut down the street, but I can get together in my community and we go to each of the businesses within a fun environment. And so thinking strategically about, that as an opportunity not only communicates, to the community that the county is interested within supporting the business environment, but also to the business owners that the community is supportive. And so, it really is a politically charged opportunity that, can result in a lot of positive sentiment. And then similarly is thinking about a buy local campaign. One of the things we noticed within the retail inventory that there are, very cool specialty shops within the county as a whole, and thinking about opportunities to bring those shops to the others elsewhere is really what we're hoping to accomplish here. And so that those buy local things include looking at a e-commerce portal that many communities across the nation have explored throughout COVID as well as prior to, and thinking about strategies not only to provide that kind of e-commerce opportunity for the business within a consolidated manner and cutting costs for them, but also thinking about strategies that they are able to kind of promote these specific industries and subsectors that are oftentimes just like, oh, this is like a really great opportunity. I think about the many ethnic populations that are within the county and some of their goods and services, and how those are very unique and a point of market distinction for the county, and really an opportunity for growth. And so really double downing on that as an outcome and strategy. In my last 5 minutes, I'm going to go through the community recommendations before questions. And so, within the community recommendations, a few things that we wanted to point out. One, we continue to look at revenue growth that, at a community level. Also looking at it from in various regions within the county. And so, note the Eastern excludes Detroit, but Downriver is experiencing the largest revenue decline overall. However, looking at the number of local businesses and the business density, there aren't really specific correlations that we're able to make within the data analysis itself in terms of what's the root cause for that. Some of the things that we do notice within many of the downriver communities, because they are on legacy corridors, that these corridors are challenged with some of the physical landscape, as well as retail is spread across many miles. And so thinking about strategies to limit that is one thing to consider. And then, looking specifically at these communities, and each of these dots on this graph represents one of the communities that we looked at. Population growth, which represents, when it's positive, opportunity to capture new sales. When it's negative, it's likely declining expenditures per household. And then looking at retail revenue growth. And so that's, how is the business actually performing itself? And so, the big finding here is that most of the communities do not experience both population and retail revenue growth. Many of them are actually in negative population growth, as mentioned in the earlier slide, as well as negative retail revenue growth. And so what we wanted to do within our strategy is provide, some initial next steps for each of those communities. And, we can give you a list of, the communities that are, they actually provided, communities that are within each of these quadrants of this graph. And so, in the next steps here, we looked at positive population, positive retail revenue. This is green area, Rockwood, Van Buren Township, and Canton Township, were the three communities there. And so, just looking at retail attraction, that plan that aligns with the rate of growth. So understanding that there's a potential to capture additional sales. Conducting business outreach to both those business owners and property owners to understand affordability concerns, because in many growing population, as well as rent rate communities, the affordability is exacerbated because of just how the market's performing. And then looking at public investment as an opportunity to continue to spur additional sales opportunities. Next, we're looking at the second quadrant, which is positive population growth and negative retail revenue growth. And this was Northville, Flat Rock, and Ecorse. So this is really understanding, hey, let's conduct a market analysis to define any oversupplied retail categories, deploy strategic marketing to new and existing residential and office populations to increase revenue opportunities. So, this is because the population is growing, being able to market them towards the retailers that are on the ground. Connecting the population centers to retail corridors through physical investment and events is another strategy. In quadrant 3, which is negative population growth, oops, that's a typo, and negative retail revenue growth, you see the most communities listed there. So one of the things that we really want to stress here is looking at adjusting the land use and zoning strategies to cluster and target retail opportunities, so that retailers are able to benefit from cross shopping and hopefully from increased sales from that activity. Identifying underperforming businesses, businesses with limited demand, pair those businesses with succession planning resources. So that's, understanding, hey, if you are, underperforming, are there opportunities for you to, change that trajectory, or are you as a business owner wanting to understand what succession planning looks like long term? And then thinking about, vacancy and how that's an opportunity to, change the kind of physical environment through activation or demolition. And then finally, in quadrant 4, we have negative population growth, positive retail revenue growth. Again, this retail market analysis is recommended for this to understand if there's any unmet demand there. Thinking about exploring strategies to ensure businesses have e-commerce and digital marketing. So understanding that they have to likely continue attracting customers from outside of their community specifically. And then looking at making physical investments that prioritize vehicular accessibility from outside community. So understanding that, vehicular access will be needed in order to continue supporting their growth. So with that, I'm actually going to pause. I can go back to slides, I'm open for any questions. And, thank you again for allowing me this opportunity.
Through the chair, I would like.
Thank you. It's a well put presentation. I want to remind everybody we have only less than 9 minutes left before the Public Service Committee start. We'll take any question. Wafa, you said you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add, we've gone through all of these results with the individual communities. So we've been through every single city, every single township, and gone through their individual results. It's also all on our website. It's on the economic development page. So you can one at a time.
You want to unmute?
Oh,
Wafa, you got cut out at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was just saying all of the results are also on our webpage, on the economic development page, split up by individual communities.
Okay, we have a few questions. Commissioner Dobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say that this was a great presentation, and I have a lot of questions, but I know that we're pressed for time, and I was wondering if maybe we could continue this discussion at our next meeting. I don't know if that would be, if the other commissioners are interested in continuing to talk about this.
I would like to.
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay.
If no objection. Okay, so Wafa, you could arrange that, please, on the next meeting agenda.
Yeah, rather than just, trying to ask one or two of my questions now and get started on a discussion. I know we need to wrap it up for today.
Okay. Any other question?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner McGormick.
The slides, are they on the economic development site as well? The slide presentation?
So the slides, this slide presentation is not, but you guys, I sent it to Joe, so you guys should have access to all the slides, but the website is much more detailed. You can get much more nuanced and get really into the weeds with the information on the website.
And this is Joe. I emailed that to every commissioner and their legislative aides yesterday, a little after 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other question? If not, thank you. It's an excellent presentation. Bobby, you did an excellent job. Thank you. And we hope to continue that next meeting. Madam the Clerk, next item.
If such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I have none. Next item.
Public comments.
Will you unmute the public and I will call it 3 times. Anybody from the public like to comment on the economic development agenda? Anybody from the public like to comment on the economic development issue?
I told them to just leave the Capitol. In response, they yelled, "No, man, this is our house. President Trump invited us here. We're here to stop the stealing. Joe Biden, not the president. Nobody voted for Joe Biden."
Madam the Clerk, we can't hear the comment.
I don't think we have a comment.
Well, I voted for Joe Biden.
Oh, I hear. Okay.
I think it's just background noise.
Oh, okay. Anybody from the public like to comment? Last one.